From the Hairenik Media Studios, good evening. Armenia's political path is becoming increasingly marked by appeasement, quiet concessions, and shifting red lines, disguised as normalization, but amounting to the systematic erasure of our collective memory and national identity. Tonight, what we are witnessing is not diplomacy, but the deliberate dismantling of a nation's soul. While the leadership sidelines critical issues, the ongoing genocidal policies of the Aliyev and Erdogan regimes, the continued genocide denial, the occupation of Artsakh and Armenian lands, the destruction of our cultural heritage, the rights of displaced Armenians, and the fate of Armenian POWs and political leaders held in Azerbaijani prisons, our history and the sacrifices of those who gave their lives for the homeland are being ignored and erased. Under the false banner of peace, Armenia's leadership is methodically wiping away national symbols, ignoring our history, and forgetting those sacrifices. From quietly removing Mount Ararat from passports to mocking genocide recognition, relinquishing strategic land, ignoring prisoners of war, and remaining silent about the 150,000 Armenians ethnically cleansed from Artsakh, this is not peace, it's surrender. The government is turning its back on the past, rewriting history, and treating betrayal as progress. This is not a misguided policy. It is a betrayal of the Armenian people. No leadership that aligns itself with the architects of our suffering, Ankara and Baku, while ignoring the wounds of genocide, the dispossession of our lands, and the suffering of our prisoners and displaced families, can claim to represent us. A government that trades memory for diplomacy, justice for convenience, and dignity for silence is unfit to lead. Appeasement is not diplomacy. Silence is not peace. And surrender is not progress. The Armenian people don't need managers of defeat or caretakers of capitulation. They need leaders with the courage to defend their history, protect their sovereignty, demand justice, and honor the legacy of those who gave everything for this nation. Armenia and Turkey held their sixth round of so-called normalization talks since 2022, with special envoys Ruben Rubinyan and Serdar Kilic meeting at the Margara border crossing and later in Yerevan. The two sides agreed to accelerate border demarcation, begin technical studies on the Gyumri-Kars railway and power line, and strengthen cultural and academic ties, including the restoration of the historic Ani Silk Road Bridge. Plans to improve air connectivity by summer 2026 were also discussed. Both sides reaffirmed their commitment to continue normalization talks without preconditions. However, critics note that Turkey continues to echo Azerbaijan's stance, tying progress to a final Armenia-Azerbaijan peace treaty. Despite Yerevan's stated readiness to open the border as soon as tomorrow, observers say Turkish preconditions dominate the talks, stalling meaningful progress. Reinforcing this view, Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan recently stated that Ankara will normalize ties with Armenia only after a peace agreement is signed with Azerbaijan. He expressed hope that the deal will be finalized in the first half of next year and thanked the Azerbaijani and U.S. presidents for their roles in initialing the agreement, underscoring Turkey's alignment with Baku. Meanwhile, analysts point to signs of a broader political narrative driving Ankara's approach. Ahead of the latest round of talks, Turkish envoy Serdar Kilic avoided using official Armenian terminology such as Syunik, referring instead to the Zangezur line. He also refrained from using the U.S.-adopted term Trump's route, emphasizing instead the corridor's role in connecting Turkey to Central Asia and other Turkic states. Experts interpret these linguistic choices as reflecting a broader pan-Turkic narrative that signals Turkey's regional ambitions while sidelining Armenian sovereignty and terminology. The Turkish Special Envoy's visit to Armenia was met with protest, as the Armenian Revolutionary Federation Youth Organization, joined by members of the public and other political groups, gathered in front of the Armenian government building. Joined by members of the public and other political groups, demonstrators condemned Turkey's ongoing denial of the Armenian genocide and its broader political agenda in the region. Protesters criticized a lack of transparency surrounding the Turkish Special Envoy's visit, accusing the Armenian government of secrecy and reaffirming their opposition to Turkey's policies. Speakers, including representatives from the ARF youth and student organizations, described the visit as an attempt to impose Turkish preconditions on Armenia under the guise of normalization. They emphasized the lasting impact of the Armenian genocide and condemned Turkey's continued refusal to acknowledge historical responsibility. Chanting "no to denial" and displaying photos of Artsakh leaders imprisoned in Baku, demonstrators called for historical accountability and justice, declaring any agreement made under such denialist terms to be null and void. Delegations led by the deputy prime ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan met recently in the border regions of Syunik and Zangezur to continue talks on border delimitation. The delegations included representatives from key ministries and the joint border delimitation commissions. While no date or location has been set for the next meeting, discussions are reportedly ongoing over whether the process will continue from Armenia's Tavush province or resume in Syunik. Meanwhile, tensions over the route's terminology continue to surface. Azerbaijani officials are insisting on calling the Trump route the Zangezur corridor, a label firmly rejected by both Armenia and Iran. President Ilham Aliyev described the route as a vital part of the middle corridor linking Europe and Asia, while one senior official even proposed naming it after Aliyev. In sharp contrast, Iran's ambassador to Armenia, Mehdi Sobhani, pushed back against Baku's claims, stressing that the agreement refers only to a road, not a corridor, and reaffirming Armenia's sovereignty over its territory. He emphasized that nothing can be imposed by force. Continuing in Baku, Azerbaijan's special envoy Elchin Amirbekov is reiterating a key precondition for peace: constitutional changes in Armenia. He claims that parts of Armenia's current constitution contain territorial claims unacceptable to Baku, and says any lasting peace requires Armenia's constitution to be aligned with both the text and spirit of the peace agreement initialed by both sides. Azerbaijani Foreign Minister Ceyhun Bayramov recently met with Brendan Hanrahan, senior bureau official for the U.S. State Department's Bureau of European and Eurasian Affairs, where they discussed the normalization process between Armenia and Azerbaijan, U.S.-Azerbaijan relations, and plans for a strategic working group to draft a charter on strategic partnership. Separately, in Baku, Kenneth Engel, executive director of the U.S. International Development Finance Corporation, emphasized that the Trump route is a key component in any future peace agreement. He noted support from Turkey and Armenia, but said Russia and Iran oppose the corridor concept while highlighting the economic potential via customs duties. During a visit to Yerevan, senior U.S. diplomat Brendan Hanrahan announced a $145 million funding package for the Trump route for international peace and prosperity, a U.S.-brokered transit corridor linking Azerbaijan through Armenia's Syunik province. The investment will support infrastructure, trade, mineral supply chains, and border security. Meanwhile, in Moscow, contrasting opinions surfaced. Deputy Prime Minister Alexei Overchuk praised the Washington agreement for bolstering Eurasian connectivity. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, however, remains skeptical, calling the deal possibly a flash in the pan without follow-through and pointing out that many of the treaty's key issues are still unresolved. Lavrov also suggested that the U.S. agreement builds on earlier deals mediated by Russia from 2020 to 2022, including those following the Second Karabakh War. Back in Yerevan, Armenian Foreign Minister Ararat Mirzoyan admitted that even a signed peace treaty would not guarantee lasting peace unless outstanding issues are addressed, especially the release of Armenian prisoners, the displaced Artsakh Armenians, and the destruction of Armenian cultural heritage in Artsakh. He rejected Azerbaijan's demand for a corridor through Syunik, insisting that any regional agreement must be reciprocal and fully respect Armenia's sovereignty and territorial integrity. His cautious tone stood in contrast to Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan's earlier claim that peace has already been achieved. Prime Minister Nikol Pashinyan was challenged in Parliament over the Trump route project, amid fears it could compromise Armenia's sovereignty by allowing Azerbaijani access through Armenian territory. Opposition MPs demanded clarity on border control, customs inspections, and legal jurisdiction, expressing concerns the project might weaken Armenia's security. Pashinyan highlighted the Washington-signed document affirming mutual respect for borders but gave no direct answers on border enforcement, instead citing modern technology for inspections. Critics warned the lack of clear guarantees risks turning the route into a backyard for Azerbaijanis. The debate underscores Armenia's delicate task of balancing international cooperation with protecting its national security amid ongoing regional tensions. Former Armenian Genocide Museum Institute Director Haik Demoyan has accused authorities of mismanaging the Tsitsernakaberd memorial restoration, citing unlicensed contractors, unqualified workers, improper tools, and a lack of oversight, resulting in serious, possibly irreversible damage. He also raised concerns about financial irregularities and corruption, criticizing the officials for dismissing concerns and silencing criticism. Opposition MP and ARF Bureau member Lilit Galstyan has demanded transparency and accountability over the halted renovations at both the Genocide Memorial and the Hovhannes Tumanyan Museum, calling the revealed conditions shameful and unacceptable, and questioning the contractor's qualifications. These accusations have sparked public concern over the preservation of Armenia's key national landmarks. In yet another defeatist move to satisfy the Armenian nation's adversaries' demands, the Armenian government has announced that starting this November, Armenian passport border stamps will no longer feature Mount Ararat, a decision viewed as part of a broader effort to systematically erase national symbols from official use and reshape the country's identity. This change reflects Pashinyan's ongoing effort to reduce the use of national symbols like Mount Ararat in state imagery, shifting focus instead to Mount Ararat as Armenia's highest peak. While officials deny any connection to territorial claims, observers warn that such moves further alienate the state from culturally and historically significant markers like Mount Ararat, which remains a powerful symbol for Armenians worldwide. The new design will feature only practical information, such as the word Armenia in Armenian and English, border crossing details, and symbols indicating entry or exit by air, rail, or road. Critics emphasize that Mount Ararat on Armenia's emblem is a vital symbol of national identity and cultural heritage, not a territorial claim. Many countries such as Hungary, Lithuania, Finland, and India keep historical symbols in their emblems without implying territorial claims. Similarly, Armenia should preserve Ararat as a core part of its identity. Removing it risks erasing civilizational memory, undermining Armenia's legitimacy, and placing party interests above the nation's. Opposition MP Kristine Vartanyan of the Armenia faction has sharply criticized the government's foreign policy, accusing it of complying with a series of unilateral demands from Azerbaijan and Turkey under the guise of no preconditions. In strongly worded posts, she cited concessions such as launching constitutional changes, halting genocide recognition efforts, removing Mount Ararat from state symbols, accepting the end of the OSCE Minsk group, limiting foreign troops on Armenia's border, and weakening the army. She warned the policy could lead to extreme future demands, including the surrender of Yerevan under threat of war. Armenia's government is proposing to reduce mandatory military service from 2 years to 1.5 years starting in 2026. Critics have labeled the proposal politically motivated, warning that it serves pre-election interests while disguising structural weaknesses as policy. They argue that the measure amounts to a military retreat in the face of Azerbaijan and will worsen existing staffing shortages, ultimately undermining rather than enhancing national security. According to these critics, the authorities may be using the draft to pursue 3 objectives at once: frame army reduction as a political achievement ahead of elections, justify future concessions by portraying them as consequences of limited state capacity, and signal to Azerbaijan that Armenia has no intention of mounting military resistance. Tens of thousands of Artsakh Armenians forcibly displaced from their ancestral homeland following Azerbaijan's 2023 offensive held Armenian passports marked with a special 070 code, long believed to confirm citizenship. However, Armenian authorities later stated these were only travel documents and did not confer citizenship, citing a still classified 1999 agreement. Despite years of service in Armenia's state institutions, including the military, judiciary, and civil service, many were barred from voting unless they registered residence within Armenia. While over 10,000 have formally acquired Armenian citizenship and thousands more have applied, many remain in legal uncertainty, holding temporary protection certificates that do not grant full civic rights. The Azerbaijani Occupation Administration in Stepanakert has demolished a mural by artist and sculptor Arnold Meliksetyan during the destruction of the former Artsakh Foreign Ministry building, a site listed as a historical and cultural monument. The Artsakh Tourism and Cultural Development Agency condemned the act as deliberate cultural vandalism as part of Azerbaijan's ongoing campaign to erase Armenian heritage in the region. In a statement, the agency said responsibility lies not only with Azerbaijan, but also with the international community, whose silence and inaction enables cultural genocide, and with Armenian authorities who fail to defend Artsakh's cultural rights. The Lemkin Institute for Genocide Prevention has issued a warning about the Armenia-Azerbaijan agreement signed last month at the White House, saying the deal could lead to resumption of military aggression and poses a threat of genocide against Armenians in the South Caucasus. The Institute criticized the agreement for failing to address critical issues, including the ongoing genocidal nature of Aliyev's dictatorship in Azerbaijan, Azerbaijan's ongoing occupation of Armenian territory, the destruction of Armenian cultural heritage, the status of Artsakh, the rights of displaced Armenians, the fate of the Armenian POWs and political leadership of Artsakh in Azerbaijani prisons, and past human rights violations under Aliyev's regime. Armenian American advocates from across the country are gathering in Washington, D.C. today and tomorrow for the ANCA Advocacy Days organized by the Armenian National Committee of America's Eastern and Western regions. The two-day campaign marks the second anniversary of Azerbaijan's 2023 ethnic cleansing of Artsakh and calls on Congress to take decisive action. Advocates are urging accountability for Azerbaijan's crimes, international protection and the right of return for displaced Artsakh Armenians, the release of Armenian political prisoners, and increased U.S. humanitarian assistance. The initiative builds on the momentum of April's successful advocacy days and includes dozens of congressional meetings. A Capitol Hill program will take place on September 16, uniting lawmakers, human rights advocates, and community leaders in remembrance and action. Organizers say the growing grassroots presence sends a clear message. Armenian Americans are committed to justice, accountability, and the defense of Armenia's sovereignty. 3 years ago, on September 13, 2022, Azerbaijan launched a large-scale offensive along Armenia's eastern border, the most serious escalation since the 2020 Artsakh War. Forces struck Vardenis, Jermuk, and parts of Syunik, seizing about 220 square kilometers. The assault claimed 224 Armenian lives, with over 20 captured and 293 wounded. To this day, the government has not published the full list of the fallen, whose sacrifice is deeply honored and whose legacy endures. Armenians also marked 107 years since the 1918 Baku massacres, in which nearly 30,000 Armenian lives were lost. Also remembered is the heroic resistance at Musadagh in 1915, where over 4,000 Armenians defied deportation and were ultimately rescued by French ships. Both events stand as powerful reminders of resilience amid genocide. And on September 13, 1922, the Great Fire of Smyrna destroyed the city's Armenian and Greek quarters shortly after Turkish forces entered Izmir. As flames engulfed their neighborhoods, Armenian and Greek civilians fled to the waterfront, where many were massacred. Tens of thousands died, and hundreds of thousands were displaced, marking one of the region's darkest chapters of ethnic cleansing. In sports, 18-year-old gymnast Hamlet Manukyan made history at the World Challenge Cup in Paris by successfully performing a new pommel horse move, now officially named after him, earning a place among the few Armenian athletes to have a gymnastics element bear their name. The Armenian Weekly will soon be publishing the 2025 AYF Olympics special issue, one of the most celebrated and widely read editions of the year. This commemorative issue captures the energy, pride, and unforgettable stories from the AYF Olympics weekend, preserving them for generations to come. The Armenian Weekly is inviting the community to support this celebrated magazine. Sponsors can dedicate ads to loved ones, chapters, or athletes, preserving the spirit of the annual games. The deadline for submissions is Tuesday, September 23rd. Joining us now is Lilit Torosyan, editor of the Armenian Weekly. Welcome, Lily.
Thank you, Ani. Pleasure to be here.
We're happy to have you. Lily, let's start by explaining to our viewers what makes the AYF Olympics Special Issue magazine so unique and what kind of content can readers expect inside.
Yeah, I think the Olympics issue has always been incredibly special to our readers. The fact that the timeline coincides with the timeline of our paper, that this is the 91st Olympics, it's the 91st year of the Armenian Weekly. There's a beautiful synthesis there of like our history being Olympics history and vice versa. Historically, it was always a dedicated special issue when we were print paper. This year, for the very first time, following our transition to a fully digital format, we are going to be making this the very first special issue magazine of the year of this like whole approach. So we're super excited that now, for the very first time, we're going to have even more content in a longer format. Historically, the paper started out as 12 pages, and then it morphed into 16 with about half black and white, half full color. Now it's going to be 40+ page, full color, glossy magazine, and people could not be more excited from what we're hearing that there will be due coverage of like all of the amazing events and gatherings of this year's really historic Olympics in Boston. So historically, if you look at the archives of a lot of the names of people just repeats throughout like the decades. So it's not just people who were participating themselves as youngsters. Now we have their children and grandchildren, part of our team who writes articles for us and takes photos. These are like generational members of the AYF Olympics. So it's definitely a very community-centered vibe, just at its core. And there's also the added component of this being something that's completely dedicated to youth. So it's like sports coverage of just youth from all over the country and Canada who come and meet once a year for these games. And it's like a big reunion, as a lot of people like to call it. So yeah, the magazine itself, in terms of the kinds of coverage that we're going to have this year, it's still going to keep the heart of what people love in the past with the print newspaper. But like I said, just there's going to be a lot more. So there's going to be more spotlight coverage throughout the weekend, different activities that were being held concurrent to the Olympics that people got to take advantage of. And we're just so excited that this will be bigger and hopefully will continue as being, a yearly, like, full spread magazine going forward.
I'm really looking forward to seeing the magazine. Why is sponsorship important for the AYF Olympics issue? How have community members used their sponsorships in the past, and who can sponsor a page and how?
Yeah, sponsorship is so critical because a lot of, as you know, like papers, we love that we're a community paper, and that comes with its benefits and sometimes with its challenges, always trying to get as much like support as we can from the community to keep things operating, especially in this age where a lot of things happen quickly and they happen digitally. So historically, it was always such a beloved thing where if you turn to former editions of the Olympics in prior years, you always see names of people you recognize dedicating a page to the issue. It's usually on behalf of like a couple and their children or something, and you see names repeat, and some of the names you'll see in there are people who participated in the Olympics as kids. So it's, again, that generational community spirit that helps defray some of the costs for printing as it's getting more and more difficult for a lot of community papers to be able to print, going forward. So it's a big help for us, as much support as we can get. No amount is too small. I think we're very fortunate that there's a lot of interest in Olympics, and a lot of people volunteer. Almost, all of our volunteers, they all do everything out of the goodness of their hearts, from writing for us, from sending us photos to, yes, of course, donating when they can. So because this is a magazine, bigger costs, of course, than when it was just, newspaper. So we hope that with continued sponsorship that we'll be able to keep this sustainable going forward, so that we don't have to reassess this model going forward. I would very much want to see a AYF special issue magazine every year.
Where can people go to learn more, submit their sponsorships, or read past issues?
Yeah, so in terms of reading past issues, you can go to our website, and under the About Us section, there is a little drop-down tab called Special Issues, and you will find the last few years' worth of the AYF special issue print edition. So those were 16 pages. And like I said, now the magazine's going to be much bigger, but you will see the last few years there just to get an idea for, what was done in the past. And I think it's just a fun read. And in terms of sponsorships, so this year we launched a Give Butter page for donations. So it's, there it is. So it's givebutter.com/Armenian Weekly, I believe is the hyperlink. So we are collecting donations, of course. So yeah, if you have the ability to give anywhere from $200 to just under $1,000, you will get your name shown at the bottom of a page, and you'll also be on the very front page where we have all of our sponsors' names listed. And anything over $1,000, you get an entire full page dedicated to you, your family, whomever you want listed there. So that's the tier that we're going with this year, and we hope that we'll get a lot of traction. The deadline is September 23rd, I think, as you mentioned, Ani. So hopefully that'll give folks a little bit of time to consider donating and helping support us. But yeah, I'm just very excited to see what comes in. And yeah, I know a lot of people are really looking forward to this magazine. So we hope that we can deliver in the way that we want to deliver it.
Yeah, I will make sure to make my donation.
Thank you, Ani.
Of course. Editor of the Armenian Weekly, Lilit Torosyan, thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you, Ani Jan.
That's all for tonight's broadcast. Thank you for joining, and don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, and X. Good night.